I screamed in my head. He told me love had no limits, yet he measured how much he could give me. I felt like I was drowning in promises that broke the moment I clung to them. Ethan said, "I want you, but I also want her." My heart cracked at the sound. I thought polyamory meant freedom, but suddenly it felt like exile. I whispered to myself, "Am I not enough, even when I give him everything?" The nights grew heavier, the silence between us sharper. Ethan held my hand, smiling like nothing was wrong, while my chest was splitting. He said, "Don't compare, don't count." But how could I not, when I watched him linger longer with Olivia, laugh louder, kiss slower? The limits he promised never existed now stood like walls around me. Love was supposed to be infinite, but his version had boundaries, and I was trapped on the wrong side of them. I wanted to believe Ethan's words when he said, "You are my foundation." But foundations crumble when weight is too heavy. He gave Olivia more of his laughter than he gave me silence. Nights became unbearable because I counted every smile not mine. Ethan said, "Don't measure love in pieces." But how do you stop measuring when every piece missing leaves you hollow? My chest felt carved open, my breath shallow. I envied Olivia's place in his light, while I sat in shadows. I told myself polyamory meant no limits, but the truth was I craved being chosen, not shared. Ethan's eyes lingered on Olivia too long, his smile brighter for her. My silence screamed louder than any words I could find. I wanted to fight, to demand answers, but my voice failed me. Ethan said, "Trust me, love doesn't run out." But trust had already run dry. My chest felt like an empty well. Silence became my prison. Ethan said, "Rules keep us safe." His words echoed like chains around my heart. The rules were meant to keep jealousy away, but instead they fed it. Sarah thought, if rules mattered, why does Olivia's laughter break them every day? Ethan smiled with false calm, insisting balance existed. Olivia leaned in closer to him, her presence glowing louder than promises. Sarah whispered inside, "Rules don't stop love from bleeding, they just measure the cut." Ethan kept repeating that boundaries meant safety, yet Sarah saw him cross them with a smile. She felt like every rule built walls around her instead of protecting her. Silence became heavier, and Sarah's breaths turned sharp. Ethan said, "Trust me, these rules protect us." Sarah wanted to scream. Protect who? Her body sat still, but inside she fractured. Sarah told Ethan, "I don't want rules, I want honesty." Ethan laughed softly, saying, "Rules are honesty." His words stung like betrayal wrapped in charm. Olivia's presence burned brighter, unspoken but undeniable. Sarah wondered if rules were just Ethan's way of hiding his choices. The nights grew heavier, the gaps between smiles wider. She remembered the first promise, no favorites. Now the rules were Ethan's shield, and Sarah's prison. She thought, I agreed to freedom, not captivity in his design. Ethan said, "This is balance." Sarah whispered in her mind, "Balance for who?" Every heartbeat felt uneven, every glance poisoned by the rules that kept her away from his light. Ethan said, "We all matter equally." But Sarah felt her body stiffen every time Olivia's name lingered longer. The rules meant nothing when emotions leaked through smiles. Sarah whispered inwardly, "Why does she get more of your warmth?" Ethan leaned back, pretending calm, but his eyes betrayed guilt. Sarah remembered his promise that nothing would feel uneven. She thought, he loves without measure, but somehow I get less. Olivia's laugh spilled into Sarah's memory even when she wasn't there. The rules Ethan spoke about felt like lies, written in thin ink, washing away at the first drop of rain. Sarah told herself she could endure if rules meant fairness. But fairness vanished with every stolen glance Ethan gave Olivia. Ethan said, "Don't question the structure." His tone sharp, defensive. Sarah whispered inside, "What structure protects me when you're already breaking it?" The jealousy grew, not from her heart, but from his inconsistency. Olivia's presence wasn't the betrayal, Ethan's broken rules were. Sarah's silence cracked like glass. She realized structure was his cage to justify choices, not her shield to protect love. Ethan leaned close, trying to sound wise, but every word carved deeper wounds. Ethan said, "Stop doubting me. Stop counting." Sarah clenched her jaw, unable to breathe evenly. Every rule broke in silence. Every moment carried proof she wasn't enough. Olivia's shadow grew larger in Sarah's mind than any rule could erase. Sarah whispered inside, "You build walls to keep me out, not her." Ethan's voice kept circling, promising balance, denying pain. Sarah realized rules weren't the problem, his choices were. Her chest felt heavier than chains. She thought, if love had no limits, why did you draw lines where only I stood outside them? Ethan said, "We're all equal here." His voice was steady, but Sarah felt the tremor beneath it. She thought, if equality exists, why do I feel invisible? Olivia smiled brightly, her presence filling every corner. Sarah whispered inside, "She glows where I dim." Ethan reached for Sarah's hand, but his eyes followed Olivia's movement instead. Sarah felt her stomach twist like a rope pulled too tight. Ethan said, "Don't let small things hurt you." Sarah thought, "It's never small when it's constant." Olivia's laugh rang like a bell, sharp and sweet. Sarah's silence grew heavier, pressing her deeper into the shadows. Olivia said, "I don't want to be hidden." Her words cut the air like glass. Sarah's heart throbbed. Olivia wasn't just present, she wanted a throne. Ethan replied, "We'll handle this carefully." His smile was practiced, but Sarah saw the cracks. She thought, he promises me protection, yet he hands her the crown. Olivia's eyes sparkled with defiance, while Sarah's burned with quiet grief. Ethan said, "We need patience." Sarah whispered inside, "Patience for what? For me to disappear?" The silence between the three felt louder than any confession. Sarah remembered Ethan saying, "No one will ever feel second." But Olivia's hand rested longer in his, and Sarah felt herself fading. Sarah whispered inside, "I am slipping into the background of my own story." Ethan laughed softly with Olivia, their eyes locked in a private exchange. Sarah's heart clenched like a fist around broken glass. She thought, "He told me love had no limits, but he limits his warmth when it comes to me." Ethan said, "Stop comparing." Sarah wanted to scream, "You compare without words every time you choose her gaze." The silence screamed in her chest. Sarah sat in silence while Ethan said, "It's not about choosing." His voice cracked slightly, betraying himself. Sarah whispered inwardly, "But every choice you make points toward her." Olivia leaned comfortably against his side, unashamed. Sarah thought, "I am the shadow in my own relationship." Ethan insisted, "You're both important." Sarah's lips trembled, but no words came. She thought, why do his reassurances sound like rehearsals? Olivia's smile widened, untouched by guilt. Sarah's silence swallowed her whole, leaving only the echo of betrayal. The rules vanished in the heat of what she saw. Sarah thought, "I agreed to share love, not to vanish inside it." Ethan said, "This is just adjustment." His tone was smooth, but his eyes faltered. Olivia laughed, her voice carrying like a melody Sarah could never sing. Sarah whispered inside, "Adjustment for whom?" The rules Ethan built collapsed in silence. She realized she wasn't fighting polyamory, she was fighting his choices. Sarah thought, "He gives her more without noticing, and I count the fragments left behind." Ethan said, "Don't turn this into jealousy." Sarah's chest burned as she thought, "This is not jealousy, it's starvation." The weight became unbearable. Ethan sat across from Sarah, his face tense. He said, "You need to trust me." Sarah felt the world spin. Trust? After everything that's been said, everything I've seen? The truth was hanging in the air, suffocating them both. She wanted to scream. Trust was destroyed the moment you let her in more than me. He continued, his voice soft, almost pleading. "This doesn't change what I feel for you." Sarah swallowed hard, biting back the words she wanted to throw. She felt something shift inside, like the breaking of glass. Ethan was a stranger now, hiding his choices behind rules and boundaries. She whispered inside, "You've always chosen her." When Ethan leaned forward, Sarah's breath hitched. She couldn't trust him anymore. She couldn't trust the lie that had been crafted around her. The walls he'd built to protect love were the very same walls that separated her from it. Sarah could feel the weight of the moment, heavy with unspoken truths. Ethan kept saying, "This is the way it has to be." But Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. This isn't the way it should be. She looked at him, her eyes searching for the man she once knew. But he was slipping away, his gaze distant, lost in his own version of truth. Ethan said, "I never meant for you to feel this way." Sarah's heart cracked. "You never meant to hurt me, but you did anyway." Olivia had been the quiet destroyer, always there, always closer. Sarah didn't even need to ask anymore. She could see it in Ethan's eyes, the lies woven into their love. She whispered, "Tell me the truth, Ethan." His silence was the answer she feared most. The confession came like a lightning strike. Ethan said, "I've been seeing her for months." Sarah froze. The room felt cold, the words echoing louder than any of her thoughts. Months? The betrayal wasn't just the presence of Olivia, it was the lies, the secret life that had been unfolding behind Sarah's back. She felt the air rush out of her lungs, as if the world had just tilted, leaving her on the wrong side of it. Ethan tried to explain, but his words fell flat like broken glass. "It's not what you think." But it was. It was exactly what she thought. The rules he promised didn't mean anything when trust had already crumbled. Olivia was never just a friend. She had always been more. Sarah whispered to herself, "You never loved me the way you loved her." Sarah felt like she was drowning in his words. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Ethan said, his voice breaking. She wanted to scream, "You don't get to rewrite this." His excuses felt hollow, and Sarah's silence grew unbearable. The love they once shared was a fragile illusion, one Ethan had slowly chipped away at. Olivia wasn't the problem. Ethan's inability to confront what he truly wanted was. Sarah's throat tightened as she struggled to speak. "I can't keep living like this," she whispered. Ethan reached for her, but Sarah pulled back, her heart pounding in her chest. "You've already chosen her." Ethan's face faltered, guilt mingling with confusion. But it was too late. The walls had been torn down, and nothing remained but the rubble. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper as she said, "I can't be your second choice, Ethan." The words felt final, like the last page of a story that could never be rewritten. Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with desperation. "Please, don't walk away." But Sarah had already started to walk. Every step she took away from him felt like freedom, but it also felt like loss. She didn't want to leave, but staying meant accepting the lie that she was enough when she was never truly his first. "I was always just the one left behind." Olivia's name hung between them like a ghost. As Sarah turned, she knew things would never be the same. "This is the end of us. Why didn't you just tell me?" Sarah's voice broke through the silence. Ethan's eyes were wide, but there was no easy explanation. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. But Sarah's chest tightened, her mind screaming. "Protect me? You lied to me." She wanted to scream, to shake him, but instead, her voice cracked. "You promised me honesty, Ethan." His words faltered. "I didn't think it would hurt you this way." Sarah whispered back, "You didn't think." The pain in her chest was sharp, each breath becoming a jagged edge. Olivia wasn't the enemy, Ethan was. He had chosen the lie over her. Her heart didn't know how to beat anymore. The silence between them was suffocating. She felt like she was disappearing, losing herself to the weight of his betrayal. "How could I ever trust you again?" Ethan stepped back, his voice low. "You don't understand. It wasn't like that." Sarah's heart raced and she wanted to scream. It was always like that. She felt her breath catch in her throat as the words she had held back for so long exploded. You chose her, Ethan. You always chose her. He shook his head, trying to reach her. It's not about Olivia. It's about us. But Sarah could hear the lie in his voice. There is no us, not anymore. The reality of it all hit her like a wave. The foundation they built was broken. The love she thought was solid had turned to dust. She stood up abruptly, her legs shaking. I'm done, she whispered, her voice full of finality. Ethan's face crumpled, but Sarah couldn't stay in the wreckage anymore. Please, Sarah. Ethan's voice cracked, desperate. Don't leave. His plea echoed in her ears, but Sarah felt nothing. He's already gone. She wanted to cry, but her tears had already run dry. She was beyond tears now, beyond anger. I gave you everything, she whispered. Ethan's eyes filled with guilt, but it wasn't enough. You broke me, Ethan, she said, her voice cold. I'm not going to beg for your love anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. She wanted to say more, to tear him apart with every truth she held in her heart, but she couldn't. Every word she had left was exhausted. I can't do this anymore. Sarah paused in the doorway, her hand on the handle, as Ethan's voice trailed after her. Don't go. She turned slowly, her eyes filled with sorrow. I have to, she whispered. I can't keep fighting for someone who isn't fighting for me. Ethan took a step forward, his face crumpling in pain. You're all I have, he said, his voice barely a whisper. But Sarah shook her head. You had me. You lost me. She walked out. Each step away from him was a step toward reclaiming herself. She didn't know what her future held, but she knew she couldn't stay in this prison any longer. The door clicked shut behind her, and with it, the finality of her decision set in. She was free, but at what cost? Sarah's feet carried her down the rain-slicked street, her mind numb. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to leave. Leave him. Leave the lies. Leave everything. The city was quiet, the rain softly pattering on the pavement. She found herself standing in front of a park, the swings swaying gently in the breeze. She sat on one, staring into the distance, the weight of her decision settling heavily in her chest. She thought, I've never been so alone, but there was a strange peace in the stillness. She was broken, yes, but she was free. The echo of Ethan's voice faded with each breath she took. I will find myself again. Sarah sat alone in her apartment, the sound of the rain against the window a constant companion. I thought I would be lost, but here I am, breathing, still moving. She hadn't cried since that night, and now, she wasn't sure if she still could. Ethan's absence felt like a weight, but the burden was lighter than the days when he was still there. I don't need him to breathe, she thought. Her fingers grazed the edges of the photograph on the table, a memory of a time before everything shattered. Who am I now? She had lost so much, but maybe she hadn't lost everything. She wasn't the same person who had walked out of his life. The pain was still there, but it wasn't suffocating anymore. I will rebuild, she whispered to the empty room. She didn't know how, but she knew she had to. The phone buzzed on the table, Ethan's name flashing on the screen. Sarah hesitated, staring at it, unsure of what to do. Do I even want to hear what he has to say now? Her finger hovered over the screen, then dropped away. The answer was simple. She didn't need closure from him anymore. She had given him everything. All of her love, her trust, and her heart. And now, it was time to give herself those things back. She didn't know where her life would go, but she knew it had to start with her, not him. She picked up the phone, deleted the message, and turned it off. I'm done, she thought. I can do this on my own. Days passed and Sarah's life started to fill with things that didn't involve Ethan. She found solace in her routine, in the simple acts of waking up, of making coffee, of sitting outside and breathing. There was a peace in the absence of chaos. She realized she didn't need to define herself by her past. I am not just the woman who was hurt. I am more than that. The guilt that had once filled her chest began to lift, replaced by a quiet confidence. She could see the world differently now, the pain no longer blinding her vision. Sarah smiled faintly. "I'm going to be okay." One afternoon, Sarah bumped into Olivia at the coffee shop. It wasn't an accident, it was inevitable. Olivia smiled, her usual warmth still there. Sarah felt a pang, but it was different this time. "I'm not mad anymore." She could see Olivia for who she was. Someone who was caught in the same storm Sarah had been in. Someone who had never meant to hurt her. "How are you?" Olivia asked, her voice soft. Sarah paused before answering, her lips curving into a small, genuine smile. "I'm okay," Sarah said, and for the first time in a long time, she meant it. The words weren't about forgiveness, but about acceptance. Acceptance of herself, and of the mess that had been her life. "We'll both be okay," Sarah thought as she walked away. She didn't need Olivia's apology. She had already forgiven herself. Weeks passed, and Sarah found herself stepping into new spaces, both physically and emotionally. She traveled to places she had always wanted to visit, meeting new people, and rediscovering parts of herself she had forgotten. She found joy in the quiet moments, in reading books she had never read, in taking long walks in the park. She had been broken, yes, but in the space that was once filled with love for Ethan, she made room for herself. She could feel the weight of her past lifting as the days passed. "I am not just the love I gave. I am the love I give myself." And that was enough. For the first time, she realized she didn't need anyone else to define her. She was complete on her own. Ethan's name appeared on Sarah's phone again, but this time she didn't hesitate. She let it ring, the sound reverberating through her apartment. Why am I still waiting for him to fix this?" she thought. "This isn't something he can fix." Her finger hovered over the screen, but it dropped away without touching it. Ethan had been a part of her story, yes, but now she was writing her own chapters. The silence that followed felt different. It wasn't filled with regret or longing. It was a silence of peace. She whispered to herself, "I have nothing left to give him." The phone buzzed again. "No more. I'm done." This was the final cut, the end of the road. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was free. Sarah stood in front of the mirror, running her fingers through her hair, the weight of the past, still heavy but manageable. "I'm stronger than I was before," she thought. The reflection staring back at her was no longer the woman who had loved so blindly. She saw someone wiser, someone who knew her worth. Ethan's words echoed in her mind, but they no longer carried the same weight. "I am not defined by his love. I am enough." She wasn't angry anymore. The bitterness had dissolved into something quieter, something more profound. She felt like she had shed an old skin and was finally breathing in the air of her own existence. For the first time in a long time, she smiled at herself. It wasn't a perfect smile, but it was hers. A few weeks later, Sarah stood at the window of her favorite coffee shop, staring out at the bustling city streets. "I don't need him to complete me," she thought. "I'm complete on my own." She watched people pass by, all moving with purpose, all living their own stories. She felt connected to them in a way she hadn't before. There was a strength in the way they moved through their lives, and she realized that she had that same strength inside her. The emptiness she once felt had transformed into something full of possibilities, full of herself. She took a deep breath, her chest rising with the air of a future that belonged to her, and no one else. "I will never be someone's second choice again." It was late when Sarah finally decided to return to the place where it all began. She stood in front of their old apartment building, her heart steady now. She thought about all the memories that had once lived here, all the moments that had felt like they would last forever. But time had passed, and those moments had turned into ghosts. Sarah wasn't the same woman who had walked out of this building all those months ago. She was someone new, someone unbroken. She had her own story now. She didn't need Ethan to define her anymore. She whispered to herself, "I'm free." And for the first time, she turned and walked away with no regrets. The months that followed were quieter, softer, and full of new beginnings. Sarah found herself in places she never thought she'd be. A new job, new friendships, new dreams. She was no longer defined by the man who had once held her heart. She was Sarah, and that was enough. One evening, as she sat by the lake, watching the sun set, she felt a quiet peace settle over her. I am whole, she thought. The love she had once given to Ethan had been a beautiful gift, but it was time for her to give that same love to herself. This is my story, and it's just beginning. The future stretched before her, wide and full of light, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah knew she was exactly where she was meant to be.